publish books of poems. Other people call you a poet. You live with the idea of poetry. You live with the notion of being a poet. And yet the making of verses, the making of works occurs in the edges of your life, in your spare time, in your late nights or early mornings. I wanted to come at the business of poetry with a kind of a grown man's attention, not to make it a job, but to try it as a life for a while.
You could say in one of your poems, Digging, I mean, you actually do say the pen is mightier than the plough. You say, between my finger and my thumb, the squat pen rests. I'll dig with it.
Yes.
It gives you this kind of tough working man's attitude to poetry, not an aesthetic view at all.
But it is. Right? It's not an aesthetic view, but it is a kind of aesthetic, if you like.
Yes.
In that, I think that there's one kind of poet whose action is to dig in to discover himself, and I mean, I think the poems In Death of a Naturalist and a number of other poems are a kind of, you might call, an archaeology of the imagination, you know, digging up the past.
Much of your poetry is about landscape, as you say, digging into it, digging down through it. What is it particularly that affects you about the Irish landscape?
Well, in a sense, it would be better if you told me that.
Well,
I'm... let's say if you're involved with poetry, you're involved with words, and my words, the words for me, seem to have more nervous energy when they are touching territory that I know, that I live with. I don't think of the Irish landscape. I mean, I'm self-conscious when you say that to me. I don't think of it as the Irish landscape. I think of it as a place that I know. It's ordinary, and I can lay my hand on it and know it. And the words come alive and get a kind of personality when they're involved with it for me. In other words, the landscape is image, and it's almost an element to work with. As much as it is an object of admiration or description, or more than it is.
I'd like you very much to describe in a way what particular tensions and conflicts this gives you, being halfway between the ancient Ireland and the much less ancient English influence.
When I was getting to an idea of myself, which is offered to you, of course, by your education and your culture, on the one hand, I was going through what any sixth former in the British Isles goes through, if he's involved in the humanities and literature, the whole process of English literature and the classics, the whole post-Renaissance formation, and yet at the same time I was getting through, I suppose, especially the study of Irish literature in the Irish language, Gaelic literature. A sense of another tradition indigenous to the island I was growing up on, and in some ways at odds with this other English culture, English literature. At odds with it because of historical reasons. And when I consciously search, I mean, it's not a thing you should do because you end up being consciously hung up if you look for a tradition. But there are two kind of traditions available. Now, the thing to do is, since I began by saying you're a product of both, is to try to marry them. And in a way, that's what I'd like to do. But you see, I'm very interested in Irish, early Irish poetry. I worked at translation of a long Middle Irish poem, which in some ways is literally out of the country I grew up in. But a mad king called Sweeney who's cursed and turned into a bird. He flies all over Ireland, but he was king of Resharkin in County Antrim. So I'm working at that on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm fascinated by Anglo-Saxon. I mean, the noises of the English language, the texture of it, the history of it. That is as stirring an element in my imagination as the Irish experience. I mean, I once wrote that I thought of the English influence as a kind of consonant, and the Irish experience as a vowel, and that I would like to make works that would be vocables, adequate, the vowels and the consonants turning into a harmony.